Hello, everyone, and welcome to FECast, the official podcast of Friends of Eternal. I am your host, Sunyveil, and today I am joined by two friends and previous guests. We welcome back Camomilk. How's it going?
Pretty good. Glad to be back here.
Yes, we're going to be talking about what Camomilk has done to the metagame in a bit, but first I'd also like to welcome back Stormblessed. How's it going, my friend?
Hello, always glad to be back on. Always glad to talk about Eternal.
Yeah, it's always good to have you. Hey, you guys saw that post that I think Patamaro made that said that they were really enjoying the return of FECast, and you guys have been regular contributors to it. So you guys saw that, right?
Yeah, that was very fun to see. It's always fun to see people express enjoyment for things you do.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it got passed on to everyone that's been a part of it, because I mean, I've been on every episode of FECast, but there have been a lot of people, as I was tagging everyone, there have been like 6 or 7 regular other people who have been contributing it to. So thanks to all of our associates out there that have also helped make FECast great.
Technically, you were on every episode but one half. You were on all of the minus one half of an episode.
Oh yeah, don't remind me of that one. And of course, where would we be thanking people without thanking our generous patrons at patreon.com? I'll get an edit in to say exactly who that is, but right now Patreon is down, so I can't see who exactly it is, but we'll be able to add that in post. And here is editing Sunyveil with the names of our patrons over at patreon.com. Big shout outs to Yeastout, D-Dub, Work Done Son, Chrissier, and Camomilk himself for sponsoring this episode of FECast. Their support makes it possible to keep FECast running. If you would like to help support this podcast and other initiatives by Friends of Eternal, be sure to check us out at patreon.com/Friends of Eternal. All right, back to the cast. All right, so on today's episode of FECast, we're going to be going over the news of the past week, and there's a lot of it. Every week, it just seems like there's a ton of news that we need to cover. We're going to go over all the news that was announced in the past week. We're going to take a look at the QCP challenge that happened this past weekend and analyze the metagame based on the top 16 of that tournament. We're going to preview the upcoming ECQ, and there's going to be an exciting announcement at the end of the show, so stay tuned. All right, so let's first talk about the QCP challenge. We're going to talk about this more, but it was won by the Discord's own Gilead, who was posting in the Discord all weekend and ended up taking down the tournament with Elysian Flyers.
Yes, congratulations, Gilead. Well done, well played.
The last Elysian Flyers standing. There was only one in the top 16, and it was in fact them.
Yeah, and we'll talk much more about that in a bit. But let's get to one of the big changes that's going to happen, and that is the market change. Essentially, what this is that all markets are essentially going to function as black markets. You can't have 3+1 markets anymore, essentially. You can't have any copies of a card that are in your market and vice versa, save bargains for some reason. I thought that was a weird part of it. You can have bargains in both your market and your deck, and sigils, which makes sense.
The sigil change is definitely very good for draft purposes, because in the past you'd play a smuggler in your deck and you'd have to like draft an off faction token or whatever. So you'd be like, well, I kind of need a power in my deck. You know, like I'll play in my like Skycrag deck. I'll pick up a Haru banner like 5th pick so I can stick it in my market, and that just felt kind of crummy. So I think certainly the sigil change really makes draft a lot better. The market change is very controversial. I'm of the opinion that it's a pretty decent change. It's something that probably needs to happen for a number of reasons, but I'll get back to that in a second. I want to discuss that we can now 3+1 bargains, which is mostly beneficial to Arc of Soul, because Arc of Soul is just great, and you can now play lots of them. You can even double Arc of Soul by playing a card to put the second copy of Arc back into your market, and then you can play both Arcs out of your market. You can do that with any bargain card. You put Inspired Prank in your market and do that, but the most likely one to be useful in that capacity is Arc of Soul. So you can stick Arc of Soul into your market and then play 2 Arc of Souls. You can drain your own market down. So yeah, that'll be very big and probably very impactful there. What do you think?
I don't think that's actually going to be impactful. I think that's pretty cute. And Arc of Soul is definitely busted, but it's also a card that it's not really the type of card that you want to play multiple times per game. Ideally, I think.
I don't necessarily say that you're going to be playing double Arc of Soul every game or whatever, but like I think 3+1 Arc of Soul is going to be very good because it just can ramp a lot. And by that I mean like a lot. There's some cute combos that Battery made note of with Entranced Cultist, the 1/1 that gives a thing quick draw and has Corrupted, where if you hit with it, then you can double Arc of Soul, where you Arc of Soul, and then you Arc of Soul a second time off the Corrupted unit. So there's a lot of power there.
Yeah, I guess if you get an Ephemeral Wisp, you can just play all of your Arc of Souls in that turn.
Yeah, it's
powerful.
Okay, that's it's a weird exception to the rule, which to the change, which I think is overall actually very good. I know a lot of people aren't too happy about it, but when merchants were introduced to the game, what were the most busted cards in Eternal? Merchants, right? Absolutely. They're so much stronger than everything else because they gave you access to 7 copies of your best card. And I think they saw this and realized we need to rethink how we're doing this. They came up with black markets, which really to me felt like how it should have been all along. When you're making a card game, the last thing you want is to make every game feel the same. And consistency in decks is good, but you don't want it to involve the same cards every time, I think. And having essentially 7 copies of something definitely does that. Also, it limits the other cards that you might be able to play. Things like Calibrate, I think, could not really... Like, we couldn't have too many cards like Calibrate that get to look at a bunch of cards from the top of your deck if you can also have 3+1 markets. So, I mean, I was a huge... I've probably played more Aurelian Merchant than most people. That was, like, almost certainly my most played card of the last several years, playing 3+1 markets in time. And I've also been a big fan of Spellcrag, and I've played Reanimator from time to time, and these are all decks that I liked, and I'm not really sad to see them go. I think that getting rid of 3+1 markets and making a uniform everything functions the same way as a black market is actually a really good change going forward. I know that's not what everyone thinks, but I'm confident that this is a good thing that Direwolf is changing, and it also lets them... Well, I don't know. It corrects a mistake they made, maybe a bit too late after the fact, but it'll open up things in the future, I believe.
So I'm curious to find out what Camomilk's take on the market change is, because I've heard Sunny in Discord and just now, but I haven't heard Camomilk's take on it yet. So I'd be curious to know what your thoughts on this are.
So yeah, I'm kind of going a little back and forth on this one. I know people have pointed out that the 3+1 market really does enable some sort of like fringe decks that probably aren't good enough to see competitive play, just a little too inconsistent, but it helps them get their key piece more consistently, like say a Crown of Possibilities deck, for example. You could put 1 in the market, have 3 in your deck, and just get that more consistently and be able to build that type of deck and have it work a bit more often. And that's kind of cool. And as far as like making the games too consistent, too repetitive, I feel like some of the most consistent to the point of being repetitive types of games have come from decks that ran black markets. You look at FJS, and it was always seemed like a Smuggler on turn 3 into Regent's Tomb on turn 4 back in the heyday of that deck. So I don't necessarily hate this change. It'll be interesting to see what happens to the meta. And there are certain decks, particularly some of these controlling decks that were running like lots of Garden of Omens in the main deck plus the market, and just doing all sorts of really consistent controlling things. Maybe it's good to see those go, but I'm a little torn on this.
So I have my thoughts are that I hope they do some buffs on the old merchants now, because now that you can't do the black market, non-black market thing, there is less reason to play old merchants. Obviously, Aurelian is still wonderful because it is unique, but Winchester Merchant could probably stand to be a 2/3 now. I've never ever had a time where my opponents played a Winchester Merchant in the past, except on 6 power, where I've been like, oh no, Winchester Merchant. Every time they play it, I'm just like, whew, just a Winchester Merchant. I don't have to worry about anything. I don't know about you guys, but that's always been my thought with Winchester Merchant, even with it being able to grab stand together, which obviously it did. So, Winchester Merchant could probably stand to be a 2/3. Maybe we can have 3/3 Fire Merchants again. So I'm curious to see if Direwolf does any buffs in the future with them. My small conspiracy theory, it's a little humorous, is that this was done in preparation because Last Light Judgment 3+1 was going to be too powerful in Throne. I never got a chance to play this or even build this because, I was too busy playing Expedition because that's what matters right now. But you can 3+1 Last Light, Reap, and Waystone Gate, and then play 8 Merchants, where only 4 of them can grab the Reap or the Waystone Gate. But you can just get such consistency to play Last Light Judgment every game with a Waystone Gate and just crush your opponents. And I think that probably would have been an unfun play pattern to see every game just over and over again, just Last Light Judgments, with 8 Merchants, because then you have 11 copies in your deck and you're not playing a bunch of bad 3-drops. So it plus your other combo piece as well, like Reap can be 3+1. So I think in a sense the and now that's just a partial conspiracy, but the main point there is that I think we would have started seeing 3 or 4 3+1s in the future, right? Instead of just putting your best card, 1 Stand Together 3+1, put Stand Together and Sword of Need 3+1, and your best unit 3+1, where it's you can have 7 copies of every card in your deck that you want, the most of, and then that just suddenly makes everything completely insanely the same every time. So I think that that's one reason that Darrell was making the change, awareness of the fact that we would progress to a point of 3 3+1s, and that sounds like dookie.
I've definitely played decks that play 3+1 of both Stand Together and the Great Parliament. I think that was in my ECQ deck, but it probably was. I can't imagine not having put a Stand Together in the market, and then I probably had Stand Togethers in the main deck. But double 3+1, I definitely did that. You mentioned the Last Light Judgment deck, and man, I feel like I missed out now just because you brought to my attention that was possible. That would have been really sweet.
I'm again 35% certain that I would have brought that to the Throne ECQ if we could 3+1 Last Light Judgment. I'm pretty sure that would have been completely busted. And then of course, just for the theorizing, I think you'd go Time, Justice, Primal, and then you can play Jotun Hurlers, and you can put Equivocate and Geneve Merchant in your deck, so that way you can have some face ages popping as well as interaction. And but yeah, obviously I didn't put much more thought into it than just that, but it's a shame that never will get to the light of day, but also possibly a good thing that will never get to the light of day.
Yeah, but what you're saying about conspiracy theories, Direwolf knows what the next release is going to be.
Yes,
it could be that
true.
The next release would have just been totally busted if you could do 3+1 merchants. It could be just that they're trying to clean up the game mechanics and make it consistent, and markets is kind of something that Eric and I had to spend a lot of time just explaining, and now they work in a uniform way. And I think there is something lost in that you don't have to decide between a black market versus a 3+1 market. But I think overall it's going to be I think it's a good change.
I mean, the most thing I'm most sad about is the flavor loss, because the flavor of you have the things in your land that you're trading about versus the illegal drugs you're smuggling in, not in your main deck at all. I thought that was the coolest flavor when they announced smugglers, and losing that's a little bit painful from a lore perspective. But all in all, and other people say why now and why not before? Well, why not before is because Darrell probably had to spend a lot of time thinking about it. They are human too. It's been so long, can't we just keep it? But it's if you want the game to go for another 3 years, should Direwolf double down on this mistake? If this is such a mistake, should they double down on it and let it sit for longer than it needs to once they come to this conclusion? Because obviously you want the game to survive for years to come, and so eventually the market change will just become the norm and not the new change.
Yeah.
So
there have been a few things like that in Magic's history where they changed the way that I think the biggest and most pertinent change to what we're experiencing now is they changed the way that slivers worked and lords worked. So it used to be that in Magic, if you had an elf lord, it would give all elves +1/+1, including your opponents, which is basically how our strangers work right now. And I actually don't mind the dynamic. I think it's weird. I think it's chaotic. I love chaos. But
sorry to interrupt, but I'm just going to say that I think that's sort of the same, but that's more of a design philosophy change, where I think the more accurate change would be, say, in Magic's history, there was a thing called mana burn, where if you tap, you had mana in your mana pool floating, and then you passed your turn, you'd take damage for it. They changed the legend rule at one point, where basically what our heroes are. You can only have one on the board at any time, and then they changed it a couple times. There used to be damage on the stack, which was crazy, and you can look that up if you really want to know what that means. And, Magic changed these rules. And I equate these to this merchant change because markets are like one of the fundamental design elements of this game. And so, and when that happened, people complained, about like even mana burn, which was like the most irrelevant thing 99% of the time. People would complain about that when that was changed. And so, so even like the minor cleanup rules changes, there are people that will always complain. And not to say that they are wrong to complain, in any case, because maybe this change is bad and Direwolf will go back on it. I doubt it, but it is possible.
Yeah, so my point was that all these had, backlash, but ended up being really good changes for the game as far as how things are going to play out, and I feel like this is a change for the better also. The fact that they're making a change as big as this, I think, is actually a pretty good indicator. I feel like we've been getting a lot of news, a lot of things to talk about over the past few weeks. And I don't know, that seems like a really good sign to me that, we're just going to keep on seeing fresh things out of Eternal, and that's going to create a better player experience.
That's a really good point, I think. It shows that they are actively working on it. They're actively invested and involved in how the game is. They're not just kind of sitting back and letting it go. So, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
It's encouraging.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I wish this could have happened, a year ago or a year and a couple months ago, but I'll take it, Okay, so let's talk about this expedition change. Stormblessed, you want to fill us in? Because I know you have some opinions on this.
I am a very opinionated person, but the expedition changes are that my minor note, we are changing the draft format slightly. There are new weights to the draft card, so if you're a drafter like I am, that's pretty exciting, actually, to improve draft. But more importantly for you constructed folks, they are adding Tales of Horus Traverse campaign to Expedition, which is, I think, like 24 new cards to the Expedition format, and there's a lot of really solid hits there. Namely, the big one that everyone's talking about is Tavrod, the cow god, so to speak.
Yeah.
But you also
Sharpen
have
those horns.
Cards that are being added. You have Cinder Yeti, Crimson Firemaw, Power Stone, Devoted Theurge potentially, Copperhall Paladin, Southwind Herald for all of you combo players, Yeti Pult for all of you Yeti Pult fans. Auric Interrogator is kind of great card. Vision of Austerity if for some reason you want to play Fire Justice Primal, which I don't know if that's ever going to be a thing, but that would be a great market card there. And you have Tavrod, obviously. Horus Traver really improves the Stranger combo decks. So I think this could be actually a pretty impactful thing, especially the 4 cards I think are the most impactful are going to be Crimson Firemaw, Power Stone, Auric Interrogator, and Tavrod, with my 5th being Cinder Yeti, although thinking of it, actually Cinder Yeti might be better than I think because, Camomilk is kind of disrupting the meta once again with, a resurgence of Rakano aggro, which, also shout out to Ellie992 from Discord for inspiring the Rakano aggro deck. So Cinder Yeti could see a really good play there as being like it's a great aggro card. It was great back then. It should be great today. And I think it's going to be a really impactful set. And my only concern with it is that just based on the QCP results alone and, being on ladder, which is not necessarily the greatest thing because I don't have the data, and the QCP doesn't have, some of the like the absolute best players. Like you have isomorphics, but you don't have collector playing. So, it's a give and take. And but if you look at like what happened, if you look at the breakdown, it's a very diverse meta. There were only 15 Grodov Strangers in the top 64, which is less than I thought. Not top 16. Which is less than I thought they were going to be. And of course, the Grodov Stranger decks are not all the same either, right? You have some Carver variants, you have some Stranger variants, you have more just Xenon mid-range variants, right? It's not just the same deck. So, there's actually a fair amount of variants. You also have the Charge variant of it, where your goal is to play it with Charge or Killer. So, so my only concern there is that because I thought the meta was actually in a slightly decent spot, adding this could be of some concern, especially if Tavrod takes over and we just have, another 3 months of Argenport dominance again. That would be kind of feels bad moment, So that's my overall take on the matter. Does anyone have any responses?
Well, as far as Tavrod taking over the meta, I mentioned this briefly before the show when we were talking, but I kind of am looking forward a bit to having just kind of a fair mid-range deck that plays big units that isn't a Strangers deck. Like right now you have like the Xenon Strangers is the one that plays like the biggest units and the strangers are so powerful that it's kind of just the best version of the mid-range deck up to this point. And maybe Tavrod will change that. Like, Tavrod is an extremely powerful card, but if it's going up against Makar's Stranger and Grodov's Stranger, then there will be some back and forth there.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about Tavrod. You look at successful Argenport builds going into, this change, and it's all unseen decks that are not going to want Tavrod as additions. It would have to be a new archetype, and right now it feels like Armory is being pushed as a creation deck, a Fire Time Justice deck, and Tavrod doesn't really fit into that. So I don't think Tavrod's actually going to be that disruptive. And you mentioned the cards that are probably going to have big impact: Power Stone, Crimson Firemaw, Auric Interrogator, right? I think one that you might have missed is Devoted Thurge. It just has a way of making it into decks. That's been my experience anyway. Like, it's a pretty unassuming card. We probably don't have real Mask of Torment decks, but
oh yeah, we do have Mask of Torment in the format. That's right. I love Mask of Torment Devoted Tears. That's always a fun deck to play. If you haven't played that deck, you should try it out. It is ridiculously fun.
Yeah, this seems like how to keep Stormblessed busy is just like have just enough support of Mask of Torment in the format to make it not good, to like make it maybe good, but not really that good.
Look, Sonny, I've played Mask of Torment when it cost 5 and the ultimate cost 30. So I'll play Mask of Torment when it costs 4 and the ultimate costs 20. So,
exactly.
I loved Mask of Torment. Oh, such a good card.
Yeah, so I think
fun
that...
card, not good card, fun card.
So I look at this and I actually think that the big addition is Horus Traver for one. I think that's actually going to be make an impact in decks that are playing farm, just because they have another thing they can search up. Although I guess there are already one cost strangers in the format. But
no, I think. So I'm going to disagree on the Horus Traver. I think for the strange combo deck, the one that you love a lot, the one that involves Strange Rider. I think it's Strange Rider, right? No, wait, Strange
Soaring
Sorcerer.
Stranger and Strange Sorcerer. Yeah.
Yes. In that deck, having the extra 1-drop will be very big, but in every other deck, if you want this effect, you will play Unfamiliar Interloper over it, probably, because that has the extra body, it can chump block twice. If you're playing the sacrifice version of the Stranger deck, with like Grodov Stranger and Display of Destruction, then it's way better there too. So I'm not 100% convinced about Horus Traver seeing too much play outside of Strange combo, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. So the card that I think is going to make the biggest impact is actually Power Stone. And I know that there's already Pillar of Progress in the format, but I think a ramp deck would want multiples of these types of effects. We don't have cards like Devotee of the Sands in the format that are traditionally used in these time decks that are trying to ramp up to something in the 4 to 6 power zone or whatever. So I think that Power Stone adding some redundancy to decks that want Pillar of Progress, I think that's going to be, I think that's going to make an impact. And there are a lot of like powerful relic things going on in the sets that we have, but something's missing, and Power Stone might be it. So I think that might be the big impact, at least from my point of view.
So I think the other implication of Power Stone is that you get a Power Stone if you're not playing Justice, which is a big deal. Like if you're playing some kind of Praxis ramp deck with like trying to get to Kairos or something through shenanigans, then Power Stone is a big deal there. If you're playing a Xenon deck that wants to ramp, you can play Power Stone. You don't have to play Justice for it. So the lack of Justice, well, if you are playing Justice, you should play Pillar of Progress first. Power Stone can be either Pillar of Progress 5 through 8 or, Pillar of Progress 5, 6 maybe. You don't have to play all 4 of them. Yeah. But if you're not playing Justice, then suddenly you have the ability to ramp, which is a big deal. You don't have Lost Scroll anymore. You don't have your only ramp dude is the
High Prophet
0-3, the High Prophet. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean it goes. There's already a good thing to play on 4 if you're playing that type of strategy in Oasis, which I think is a really powerful card.
We don't have the Bond Paladin, right? The Noiter of the Faithful, whatever it's called.
No, that was in a different expansion.
Okay,
that's
good.
Rotated out.
Okay, thank goodness for that. That plus Copperall Paladin would be very good.
Yeah.
Yes.
In Expedition.
All right, and do we have anything else to say on the additions that we're getting for Expedition? I think we covered it. Let's move on to the next topic.
Yeah, I think Stormblessed covered that pretty well.
Sorry, if you wanted to say something.
No, that's great. That's why you're on here.
Yeah.
Being prepared with factual knowledge and really crazy brew ideas. That's your niche. That is your title Okay, so we have an ECQ coming up, and it feels really soon to me. I mean, I feel like it was just yesterday that I was at DreamHack double queuing the DreamHack MTGA thing and the ECQ. But yeah, next weekend we're going to have another ECQ. It's going to be Expedition. I mean,
not next the March 20th. I don't know
yeah,
when
March
it's
20th.
Yeah,
coming out.
March
but
20th through 22nd.
Yeah, and it's going to be Expedition with all these changes involved. Obviously, the market change has nothing. Well, actually, the market
3 +
change.
1 Arc of Soul. 3 + 1 Arc of Soul.
Yeah, you couldn't do that before. Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay, that yeah. All
Well,
right.
what about 3 + 1 Inspired Prank? No, that's just terrible.
That doesn't sound good unless you have like lots of Jotunhurlers and Pockfox and whatnot.
Maybe I can try 3 + 1 press the advantage. We'll see.
No, but
Oh,
no.
man,
Oh no, that's the
so
thing. I
cool.
forgot about that. I was gonna bring that up. I'm glad you did. Yeah, 3 + 1 press the advantage might actually be really good. You can't protect in response to a removal spell, but protect, to just make sure the removal spell doesn't work and to get a tempo advantage that way could just be powerful enough by itself. Especially because, again, you can do my thing of, play your Blazing Salvo, press the advantage into the market, and then you can use 2 of them twice and get card advantage that way. I'm not even kidding. I think that's going to be really powerful, putting your bargain card into the market and then pulling it out with the bargain ability. It's basically like Zoe swapping.
This sounds terrible to me. In any case, good luck to everyone that is going to battle in this ECQ, and the format's going to be Expedition. That's what we're going to talk about for the rest of the show. All right, let's recap this QCP challenge, won by Gilead from the Discord server, and who credited I got a personal shout out like after Gilead won, but I think that they were really just shouting out FECast, which is great. I mean, that's amazing. And you can see it in their deck list. They were playing Legion Flyers, which is the deck that I said I was considering playing. I ended up playing Xeon Strangers, was a bad idea. But I said that if I was playing the tournament, I would probably play Legion Flyers. And they're playing Kamado's tech of 3 Edict of Linrai just in the main deck. And yeah, what greater praise is there than someone taking the knowledge they get off of FECast and winning a tournament with it? I think that's amazing. Congratulations, Gilead.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Congrats, Gilead.
Edict of Linrai is really well placed. We'll see if that shakes out, but I think it's possible it's still going to be well placed. Look at every deck, and they're either sort of maining fire with dragons or maining time with strangers. The only deck that it doesn't hit is Unseen. But the main benefit there, I guess Combrag. I guess no, yeah, just Unseen really. The main benefit there is that the stun is still useful against the Unseen deck, right? Because all you want to do is tempo them out anyways. So in that respect, it's still probably good in that matchup to some extent. Obviously, it's not what you want to do, but
I think that today in particular is a really bad time to play Edict of Linrai because today is the day where they just released the Tales of Horus Traver and everybody's experimenting with Tavrod decks
that's
right
true.
now.
Yes, no, that's fair. Yes, no, ignore my last comment. Camomilk is right. Do not main deck Edict of Linrai, but you should put in your market still.
So one more cool thing about their deck list is that they're playing 2 copies of Uelo Sky Tactician, which is a 4-cost primal legendary. It's a 3/5 pledge.
Has terrible flavor though. I just want to remind people of that. It has terrible flavor. Like, what is the flavor behind this card? Are they like commanding the sky units through like Wolf Semaphore? Like
So it's a 3/5 on the ground. When you attack with 1 or more units with flying, play a 2/3 wolf. So it's kind of a 3/5 plus a 2/3 a lot of the times in this Legion Flyers deck.
Completely ignoring my comments.
Well, we have the card in front of us, and the people out there listening might not. I actually did get a comment about that. Someone said, "Can you please name out the cards when you talk about them?" Anyway, so it's kind of interesting. This is probably not attacking in the deck, but it's doing a great job of blocking, and extra turns are extra attacks with your flyers. So
yeah, I really want to take Gilead's builds for a spin. I haven't actually taken it out yet, but some of these cards are pretty spicy. You got Uelo, however you say it, like you mentioned. Alluring Kirin, this is kind of a cool card that was spoiled, and I haven't had a chance to play with it yet, but it looks just really interesting. I'll read this text. Alluring Kirin is a 1 for 1 power and 1-time influence. It's a 1/1 with flying, with the text that spells and weapons cost 1 more, and has Mastery 2, play all power cards from your hand. So just throwing off your opponent, making their spells cost more, making their weapons cost more. It seems really interesting in this deck.
Yeah, we talked about it last week, and I'm really high on it.
So reminder that this is spells and weapons cost 1 more, not just your opponent. It's also your own spells and weapons, which is why Gilead's deck is not playing Spell Shaper or as many spells as other Elysian Flyer decks. Shout out to Fat Fish, who is, I still love the card. I crafted 4 of them. I played it for like an hour, and then I never played with the card again. But I still love the card. So the Majestic Skies is basically the best way to make it work, because it becomes a 2/2, which is a real threat compared to a 1/1, and you can activate the Mastery immediately. And Disruption, once it's a 2/2, it suddenly becomes a good card. When it's a 1/1, delaying your opponent for a turn isn't that good if they are not caring about your 1/1s in play. But with the adding to the mass quantity of 1/1s, Snowstorm Druid is great. Cloud Snake Hatchling somehow has become like a staple metagame card. Cloud Snake Hatchling, the epitomal 1 primal 1/2 flyer from the very first set that has never been good and constructed.
Hey, my first deck was Elysian Flyers in set 1 in closed beta. That was what I played, and people kept on playing Sandstorm Titan on me, and I was like, what is this? This is so broken.
As I said, Cloud Snake Hatchling has never been good in the meta once.
Well, yes. This evokes fond memories of the dawn of eternal...
Since the dawn of time, Cloud Snake Hatchling has slumbered, but now it rises from the deeps.
It won a tournament! Awesome.
It did win a tournament.
Let's break down the top 16. We only have a deck list of the top 16, unfortunately. And it was also unfortunate that the players didn't get to see all of the deck lists. To my knowledge, this was a closed deck list event, right? The players never got to see their opponent's deck list.
Because there was no coverage. There was no need to send out deck lists.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm glad they're publishing. No, I don't actually have a problem with it. Anyway, so the meta of the top 16, there were 4 Argenport Unseen decks. None of those decks were splashing any factions, which I think is the way to play Unseen. There were 3 Strangers decks mixed between Xenon and Destruction. There was one that splashed fire, as Stormblessed alluded to try to get Magus of Celerity, I believe it's called.
Yeah, so just to clarify, Magus of Celerity is a 3-power time fire card. It is a 3/3 with Inspire, and Inspire is whenever you draw a unit, it does something, and it has Inspire, give units charge, summon Scout. So the idea with it is you play Magus of Celerity, then you play Reunite, which is 2-power, draw a stranger of your choice from your deck, and you pick out your Grodov strangers out of your deck, give them charge. A Grodov Stranger with charge basically will win you the game, and the goal is to win the game through a Grodov Stranger with charge.
So I just want to say, I was just looking at Suno's deck, which is Fire, Time, Shadow, and it looks like it runs a bunch of strangers, but it doesn't run Magus of Celerity.
Oh.
I hadn't really looked at them too close before. It does have Swift Stranger.
So, but there is a Magus of Celerity deck, as far as I recall.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
that's
remember
interesting.
seeing people play with that.
Yeah, I like Sunu's list is interesting. It's running 2 Dark Betrayals, presumably for the mirror of some kind. You can steal a Grodov Stranger and give it charge until end of turn. Ugh.
Well, I just think that
Yeah,
the trail is pretty good.
I remember when Sunny was like, I remember during the spoiler cast that we did, we were discussing potential cards to talk about, and I was like, oh, we should talk about Dark Betrayal, and Sunny was like, nah, there's no way Dark Betrayal is going to be good.
It turns out it's really good when you're fighting against Grodov Stranger.
To be fair to Sunny, though, we didn't have Grodov. We did not have Grodov Stranger spoiled at that point, I don't think. Or was spoiled
that's
that
true.
day. So,
Yeah.
to be fair to Sunny, he's not, completely wrong. He's just, partially wrong.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, back to the breakdown. We have 4
Yes.
Unseen decks, 3 Stranger decks, 2 Scrycrag Dragons, and one is playing a beatdown version that uses... it just has the Burning Core Drake, which is the 3/1 flyer for 3. And the other one is playing more of a combo version of it that has Touch of Destruction?
Touch of Force.
Touch of Force, the one that
which
gives
is,
double damage.
3 fire, fast spell that has give a unit you control double damage, and then give a unit spell or weapon in your hand double damage. So the idea there is you play Eclipse Dragon, and then on your
I think
opponent's turn,
it's for Acidonis. I think you're supposed to get
Sure.
Acidonis,
Oh, I see.
get the Mastery 3 that gives +3 damage
I
to
see.
spell damage to a card in your hand, and then double damage your Cinder Clutch and just make a bunch of 3/1. So it's a combo version of the Dragon's deck.
What I just mean by that is like the like sort of the ideal play line is that you have your Eclipse Dragon, and then on your opponent's turn you have 3 power. So you're not. So basically, the problem with Touch of Force is that it's kind of tempo negative in a lot of ways because it's very power. It does it can be tempo negative because it's a 3 cost fast spell that can maybe deal your opponent like 3 damage or something. But the upside is that if you play Eclipse Dragon, then suddenly the tempo disadvantage is gone because you aren't, using that power up that you're using the power you otherwise probably wouldn't be able to use. So that's sort of the ideal line is that you use it with your Acidonis and your Cinder Clutch, and then you take advantage of the Eclipse Dragon's ability to make it exceptionally powerful synergistic effect, actually.
Yeah, or you could just play Acidonis on 4 or 3
Yes.
even with Spellbound Vistage. You play Acidonis, then the next turn you play
Touch of Force.
Touch of Force plus Cinder Clutch. You hit them, Touch of Force, Cinder Clutch, and all of a sudden you probably win that game unless
It also means that Acidonis would trigger only with 2 attacks instead of 4, which is a very big deal because sometimes you can't deal with Acidonis immediately, but you can prevent its ultimate from going off. But now you wouldn't be able to do that.
In any case, it's cool to see both versions of Skycrag Dragons represented. We had 2 Carver decks. We had 2 Combre aggro decks, which I don't think was on people's radars going into the tournament. And then we had, of course, the winning Elysian Skies deck, a Rakano Armory deck by Almost, which I think is interesting. And I think this, Almost is known for having brews all the time, like brews that work very well. But I think that this deck can actually be tuned and can be a real player. We were talking about how, some of my guests on last week didn't think that Armory was necessarily a real deck, but I think that there's potential there. I don't want to talk about this one too much, but the one that I do want to talk about is one Rakano aggro deck by patron of the show, Chrissier. And if you hang out in the FE Discord, Chrissier is very active in the piloting club and other channels. So congratulations, Chrissier, on the top 16. We're happy for you. And let's talk about this deck. Camomilk, break us down this deck that Chrissier is playing.
Sure. So Chrissier is playing a deck that is very, very similar to a deck that I put together just the Thursday night before the weekend tournament, actually. I think Chrissier just made a couple of changes to that original list. And that list in itself was heavily inspired by a mono fire deck that was created by L992. I think that's it.
Yeah.
I remember facing L992 once on ladder, and they played a Kazuo and just a really aggressive beatdown. They have Thunder of Wings in the deck for the flying charge dragons. And I believe they destroyed me in that game, and then added me on the friends afterwards to talk about it a bit. And I mentioned that I had been just kind of toying in the back of my mind of building a deck with Fury Blade and Kazuo and Rakano, the Oni Quartermaster. That just to go over those cards, Kazuo is a 1 cost fire card. It's a 2/1, and it has the ability that when you play a relic weapon, you also play a +1 weapon with Overwhelm on Kazuo. And it has an ultimate to pay for to invoke fire. Fury Blade is a 1 cost relic weapon. It's just a 2/1 relic weapon. So those go well together. You play Fury Blade for 1, you get a weapon on Kazuo. And then Oni Quartermaster is a 3 cost 2/2, and it says when you play a weapon, draw a card. So you can imagine the synergies that might happen here if you have a Kazuo in play and an Oni Quartermaster in play. If you draw a relic weapon, then Quartermaster draws you a card from the relic weapon, and the relic weapon causes Kazuo to play a relic weapon, and then you draw another card with Oni Quartermaster, and you get some extra value that way. And so after talking with L992, I think that inspired them to add Fury Blade to the deck, and they had great success with this. They went on a very, very hot run into Masters with a very high win rate, and it was a pretty cool deck, but I personally wasn't a big fan of all of the cards in the deck. I think they had some mind fires, I don't know if it was Mindfire. I think it's a different name of the card. It's the 1-cost card that deals 1 damage to 2 different things.
Oh, is it like Ruinous Blast or something?
That might be it, yeah.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, what a medium card to include in a deck like this.
Yeah, it's very situational, and they were also running Ankle Cutter, which, I mean, if your opponent... Ankle Cutter is a unit with the text that says, when a unit with Endurance or Lifesteal takes damage, kill it. And that card it's also a situational card. There are times when you combine it with the Ruinous Blast, and you can kill 2 things with Endurance or Lifesteal, but it seems a little inconsistent.
Ankle Cutter is still being played in Chris Ye's deck because, well, it's still a 3/1 Oni, which means it can take advantage of the Oni buffs from Acclaimed Artisan, and it's also just a 3-power 2-drop that can attack.
Yes, that is actually one of the differences that Crissier has from my list. I was not running Ankle Cutters, and Crissier liked them, so he found a space and cut a couple of cards to add in these Ankle Cutters just to help in certain matchups. But yeah, I wanted to try a second faction basically with this Mono Fire deck, and with the second faction, you obviously get access to more emblems, so that means you have a little less flooding going on if you draw a lot of power. And then there's just a lot of options, especially in Rakano. We already mentioned the Relic Weapon synergies with Kazuo and Oni Quartermaster. And another card that was really catching my eye in Justice is Tinker Overseer. This is a 2-cost Justice card. It's a 2/2 flyer, and it has the text, when you play a relic, Tinker Overseer gets +1/+1. And that also counts for relic weapons. So you can imagine a curve of turn 1 Kazuo, turn 2 Tinker Overseer, turn 3 you play a relic weapon. Could be a Fury Blade. In Rakano, it could be Sword of Ikaria, and that buffs your first 2 plays. So Kazuo becomes a 3/1, and Tinker Overseer becomes a 3/3 with flying. And when you get these kind of starts, they can really snowball really fast. And like I said, I first put this together the Thursday night before the weekend tournament, and it was just doing really well for me. I went like 6-0 or something. I'm like, I'm just going to run this in the tournament tomorrow. So I signed up for the deck list, was off to a hot start, posted the list in the Discord, and a few other people took it, and Crissier took it all the way to the top 16. It's pretty exciting to see him do that well.
Yeah, it sounds like everyone who played this deck had a ton of success. Do you know all the other people that played it? Zoro, right?
How did by the way, how did
Yes.
how did you do? What was your
Yeah, I was saving
record?
that for last. We'll get to that.
Oh, okay.
I did have some very nice success with the list. I went 25-3 in the event,
Oh my
and
goodness.
ended up tied for first place. So that was after the qualifying rounds. I did not play in the top 64 on day 2. So
Oh, okay. That's waiting. Okay.
yeah, I'm not sure how I would have done on day 2 with the prize structure of this event. I know some people weren't as incentivized to play the
15
full.
QCP is pretty good by itself.
Yeah. I entered the event thinking like, hopefully I can make top 64 and get those 15 QCP. But yeah, I think Zoro CZ also played a version of this deck and made it to the top 64, I'm pretty sure. So there was I think at least three copies in the top 64.
Can I just give a shout out to the Rakano market, because it is a very well put together market, except for Talon of Nostrix, which I think looks like complete garbage.
You could put a Presley advantage here.
Yes. Oh yeah. There'd probably be Presley advantage in this.
So the market, for those of you who can't see what we're looking at, is Edict of Kodosh, Edict of Shavka, makes a lot of sense, off of a Blazing Salvo market, so everything costs 2. Fall Short for the big stuff like Rodolph Stranger, Phoenix Stone for anything that has trouble with the flyers.
Just to explain, because the other 3 you probably should know about, but Phoenix Stone is basically, until it was buffed and then until it entered Blazing Salvo markets, it basically was complete garbage. But Phoenix Stone is a 2 and a fire for a relic, and it doesn't do anything, but you can pay 2 on your turn, and it will transform into a 4/4 Phoenix with flying in charge, and at the end of turn, it will transform back into the Phoenix Stone. So basically, the power there is that you basically get to put a really hard to deal with flyer into your deck that can, kind of surprise opponents, get through relic weapons pretty well. And, except for like cards like Cast in the Shadow, like Edict can't kill it. So it's just a pretty decent card to have in your deck. And it's really good in the market because the complication with these new spell markets is that it can be hard to find cards, especially in Condemn and Blazing Salvos, that you don't get the flexibility of having a card at each spot on the curve. with regular merchants, you can have your removal spell, your 4-drop, your wrath effect, your big cost card, and your power. But in these markets, you have to have everything that costs 2, so it could be hard to find useful things at all points in the game. And Phoenix Stone in an aggro deck helps you in these sometimes longer games that aggro decks, medium longer games, right? Like, 8-turn games rather than like 5-turn game. It can help you in these medium term games. And so, it's a very solid market, except for that Talon of Nostrix.
But I think Press the Advantage would be good. I think Press the Advantage would be great. You have Akko and
Kazuo, Acclaimed Artisan,
Mhm.
Ankle Cutter, Mark Maker, and Oni Quartermaster in Chris Ye's deck, that is, as all being Onis. You have to hit with 2 of them, but if only Shenra was an Oni.
Yeah, I mean, also, like, it's a card that you're never actually getting from the market. Like, it just means that you prioritize getting Fall Short or Phoenix Stone more often. I think it would be a good inclusion here for the whatever percentage of times that you manage to trigger it.
Actually, in my list, I was running a Press the Advantage in the market. Christier cut that for the Edict of Shavka, I believe. I did not have the Fire Edict of Shavka in the market.
I think I'd probably play Edict over Talon, but
Yeah, I'm with Stormblessed here, but also we have 0 reps.
I see where you're coming from, but I wanted to max out on the relic weapon synergies between Kazuo and Tinker Overseer and so on.
Yeah, so the goal there is you wanted to have a weapon in the market. But like Talon of Nostrix is just like such a medium card. It's just like, are you really going to want to get? Yeah, I was gonna say, are you really going to want to get like?
Yeah.
Like I actually, this is a really good question. In your 28 games at the QCP event, did you pull Talon of Nostrix out of your market? And was it like great, or was it just like a medium card?
I thought it was actually pretty good. There were several games where I pulled it out, and especially when combined with the fire spell itself, like a Blazing Salvo. Say if they have, you start out with a Kazuo in turn 1, and they play say a 2/3 to try to block it. Well, you can just use your Blazing Salvo, get Talon of Nostrix, and clear out their 2/3, and you spent maybe more value in cards than you'd like, but you buffed your Kazuo, and if you had like a second Kazuo or a Tinker Overseer in play, you buffed those, and it's a pretty aggressive play to make.
I'm still not sure about it, but I will. What's the word?
Defer.
Defer. Yes, I will defer to the creator of the deck and their expertise, because Camomilk should know how their deck functions better than myself. I will say Fury Blade is one of those interesting cards that I had been contemplating from drafting, because there have been many drafts where I will have drafted a Fury Blade in my fire deck, and I will keep it in hand because in draft, you're not just going to play it on turn 1.
I would play it on turn 1.
But every time I look at it, every time I'm looking at it, and like how much damage would it have done if I had played it on turn 1 in draft, just played it out? And it's always like 8 or 10 damage. It just would have like destroyed my opponent. And so like maybe I should start playing on turn 1. But basically, while draft is not 100% conferable to constructed, there are certain times where if you look at a draft card and you're like, man, this is really good, then you can like be like, oh, I think there have been a couple occasions like that in Eternal's history where like there's been like a card in draft that was like really good and then eventually saw playing constructed for the same reasons it was good in draft. And I think Fury Blade, was underrated probably.
Stormblessed, do you remember me saying keep an eye out for Fury Blade when we did the preview show?
I do not, but I believe you. And I was definitely disdainful of it. I was disdainful and I was wrong there.
Yeah, I'm going to see if I can get the audio of that clip, because I think Fury Blade it's a very real card. Editing Sunyveil, just stepping in here for a moment to say that I looked and I couldn't find the audio where I said that I thought that Fury Blade was going to be a big player in Constructed. I'm pretty sure I said it out loud, but I'm not sure where. Camomilk said that it sounded familiar, that I said something like that. So it's possible that that was just on stream one day or something like that. All right, let's get back to it. Anyway, great job, Camomilk. This deck looks amazing. I am going to put my Sunny stamp of approval on it, and I think this is the deck to beat for next week. I know it only showed up
deck to beat for next week. Wow,
that's how good I think this deck is. I know we only had a few people playing it, but everyone who played it did extremely well. And
you do get Cinder Yeti now, though, maybe a slightly different version or whatever. But like Cinder Yeti,
I think Cinder Yeti will go well. Yeah,
like
I don't know. I'm looking at this deck, and like Acclaimed Artisan looks really weird to me in it, and
yeah, but just take out Acclaimed Artisan and put in Cinder Yeti.
Well, this was like a night before type of thing, so
Sure,
you
sure.
could definitely do some tuning with it. But I think this deck is super scary.
Well, also Synergy wasn't legal at the time, so it's not like it was like, oh, I chose to play Artisan over Synergy. It's like, well, no, I didn't have the tool available, and some
Yeah,
Artisan's not
okay.
terrible.
But I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like, there's probably another
Sure.
2-drop that you might be able to find in the format that
Sure.
works well in this situation.
Crown Watch Paladin or something. I don't know. Probably not that one. There's no weapons in the deck.
I do think it's a little early to just crown this deck as the deck to beat, because people weren't teching against it, really. Like, people were on these. I faced a lot of Firetime Justice decks with Shenron Beaks, and they were just too slow for this deck. Like, this deck is really fast.
Yeah, I kind of think that there's an interesting thing to be said, Camomilk, that maybe you shouldn't even played the quarterly challenge, and you saved it for made it your hidden tech at the ECQ and crushed everyone.
Probably.
like this was a deck that was on no one's radar, and I also would like to say that this goes to show that there's always more deck building to be done. This is a deck that probably is going to be a really good meta choice, tier 2 at the very least. And and it was unknown for all these weeks of Expedition, and everyone's always like, oh, there's no room for deck building in Eternal. Oh, blah 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 blah. Why is everything on rails, Direwolf? It's like, well, no, you can still there's still always room to improve things, and Camomilk shows that time and time again, going back to old even Shimmer Pack lists and going to Recano aggro ideas. As if I may, before we move on from this, the QCP challenge recap, I would like to give a quick shout out to Cape Fear's deck for running a solid 78 cards in the main deck. If you look at the website, they have 83 cards, which means 5 in the market, 78 main deck. They're playing Worm Calling in the market and Rectifier in the market. I love them. I love it. It's gorgeous. So I want to give a quick shout out to this. Wait, how much power? I guess are they playing 26 power? They're playing 26 power. They're playing the bare minimum. But yeah, so shout out to 78 card main deck.
Hey, I'm back. I got disconnected for a second there.
Oh, did you hear what I said?
I just missed it.
It wasn't important.
It wasn't important. Oh, darn.
Okay.
Well,
I was going to say I had 2 more comments to make about the Recano aggro deck, if you don't mind. One is a shout out to L992 for their fire deck. In particular, I think Thunder of Wings was a really key card that I hadn't been considering. And then Stormblessed already covered the Phoenix Stone in the market. That was a really important piece of tech that they put in their fire deck that I kept in this market. And the other thing I wanted to say is, as far as people not teching against this deck, I think in all 28 games that I played during the weekend event, I only faced one time I faced an Aramont's Designs.
Yeah, that's obviously the best card against this deck is Aramont's Designs, because the deck is running 8 cards that don't die to Aramont's Designs.
Yeah, it has like 12 1-drops and another 8 2-drops, I think.
Cursier's deck is running 10 2-drops, so yeah, it's like 20 plus of the cards all just die. If they play 1 into 1 into 1, and then you play Aramont's Designs killing their 3 1-drops, they did 2 damage to you, or 1 damage with Akko, then oops.
Yeah.
I guess I just lose the game. So maybe we'll see more Aramont's Designs. Maybe we'll see a Stone Scar, or maybe Feln Scar control deck that's playing Aramont's Designs in the market, because you can get off Blazing Salvo. I always like the sound of that, but it also sounds kind of bad, really. But
yeah, it seems promising. Like it feels like a good market card.
So the problem with Blazing Salvo and Aramont's Designs, as I found out, is there's very few 3/2s for 3 or whatever that are being played. So if you're playing Blazing Salvo to kill a small thing, and you play Aramont's Designs to kill like another small thing, you're just doing 2 1-for-1s, which is like not really where you want to be. So it's just kind of awkward that way, because it's not like Torch, which would be obviously insane with that. It's kind of like they're at conflicting odds, where Blazing Salvo kills small things, Aramont's Designs also kills small things. So that's the sort of conflict there that I discovered when testing that interaction out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Maybe someone can crack the code, because I do think that there is potential there. But yeah. So anyway, I guess we can move on from the QCP challenge recap. So what do you think is going to be the metagame moving forward, Sonny?
I think that this Recano aggro deck is very good. I am really high on what this deck is doing. I also think that the Skycrag Dragons deck is probably going to be a big player because I don't think very many people were on it, but it seemed very good. We talked last week about how there are weaknesses to like the unseen decks and the flyers decks and the carver decks, and how we didn't really love any of those decks. So I think those are going to probably fall put to the wayside a bit. I think flyers and unseen are solid enough that I think that they're going to keep on putting up results, but maybe not be at the top of the metagame. I think that Rakano Armory is also something that could, like, I think there's a lot of unexplored space in that deck and a lot of room for improvement on the current builds.
And never count out Combra Aggro, because just when you think Combra Aggro is gone, it'll always win an ECQ.
Yeah, that's true. Combra Aggro and Reanimator, right?
Yeah, well, Reanimator is, that's probably the biggest loss from the market change, that and like Spellcrag, but Reanimator's kind of needs to find new waters because the old 3+1 Reanimator deck is gone.
So prior to building this Rakano aggro deck, I had been playing a lot with a Combra aggro deck, and it certainly seemed strong in a lot of matchups, but one matchup where it had a really rough time was against Unseen. Just all those battle skills could really give it a rough time, but the Rakano had a much better matchup with all the relic weapons it was running.
So are you an aggro deck player, Camomilk? Do you love your aggro?
I'm loving it more and more.
Ooh, converted to the dark side.
Well, there was no, I think I mentioned this earlier, there's no creation deck in the top 16. A lot of people were on that deck. For some reason, all of us thought it was not good last week on the cast.
So my thoughts about creation are that Display of Creation, I think, is kind of just complete garbage. I thought Display of Creation was going to be a really good card, and every time I've tested it out, it has always underperformed. It has never felt great. The second ability is not as powerful as it looks. It's probably way better in draft than it is in constructed. Mm-hmm. And the, playing Privilege of Rank just every time is not exactly what it'd be, although, you did play Privilege Rank in the past, but this format's a lot more aggressive than the format with Privilege Rank in it. Yeah. Plus, there's no way to, get it free with Bullet Shaper. So, like, in the past, you would play it, you would be fine playing Privilege Rank on 3, but you really wanted to, cheat it out with Bullet Shaper, basically. And you can't do that here. And so, and it's also, costs a heavy influence requirement, which is relevant in the early game. So I think Display of Creation is probably my first place to cut in order to improve the deck. Even just put like Amber Acolyte in over Display of Creation probably improves the deck a lot, because Amber Acolyte's another unit for distillation. It impact the board, and it also gets you your power that you want to keep getting. But that's just my basic thoughts on creation as an archetype, is that it's just, Naoki was overhyped, obviously. Not obviously, but everyone thought Naoki was going to be busted, and Naoki just hasn't found her home yet. She needs the right place, and she just hasn't found it yet. It's hard because it turns out that XXYYZ is not free in Expedition. It just isn't. I mean, maybe I'm building my power bases wrong, but I've had a difficult time reaching XXYYZZ. As I found out playing I played a purpose deck at the quarterly, which had 8 main deck edicts, and it was just all sorts of nonsense with curses and Matriarch and Cast in the Shadow are together mean that the deck has influence requirements of XXYYZZ with Justice, Primal, Shadow. Sorry, Patriarch, right? It's Patriarch.
Yeah, it's Patriarch.
I always call it Matriarch, but Patriarch. I found the hardest part about Patriarch is that it's just really hard to play because the influence is so tough. And so so just playing that with had the XXYYZZ, it's not as free as it looks, and so Naoki just. It's not Ikaria. It's sad, but I think that plus Display of Creation. I definitely don't think you can play them both in the same deck. That seems like a mistake. But yeah, so that's my sort of creation thoughts briefly.
Okay, so back to the original question.
Sorry.
What do you think the meta is going forward?
I went on this massive tangent. I'm really sorry. You guys got to stop before I get too far. Strangers, you forgot about Grodov Stranger, by the way, in your meta-analysis study. I still think there'll probably be a bunch of Grodov Strangers, because that card is still really good.
I played Grodov Stranger at this event, but I also didn't think my deck was great. But at the Misplay anniversary show, I was trying to convince the other people that I just didn't think that Grodov Stranger and Kindling Carver were that good. Like, they have upsides, but I don't think they're actually what you want to be doing in this format. And I kind of stand by that. Like, I think that Grodov Stranger, it's expensive. It doesn't play defense well. Sure, it can block stuff on the ground, but we're talking about a format that has Unseen, which have unblockable or flying. We have
Yes.
flyers. We have just a lot of decks that don't really care about a 6/6 on the ground. Yeah, sure, you can draw 2 cards when you attack, but you have to survive the turn that you play it, and you're not gaining life. You're not killing something. I think that you have to do a lot of work to make Grodov Stranger really good, and I think it's just not. I don't think it's where the metagame is. I actually didn't even play 4 Grodov Stranger in my Stranger deck, and Camomilk gave me a lot of crap. Not Camomilk. Kamado gave me a lot of crap about it. But so like I'm actually really low on Grodov Stranger. I don't expect it to be a big part of the ECQ, and I know that I'm going to be crucified for saying that, as I often am. But
cough, cough, carve it, cough, cough.
Yeah, people can be wrong. That's okay.
So Camomilk, what are your thoughts on Grodov Stranger?
Grodov Stranger is definitely a powerful card. It's interesting.
So do you want to take time to collect your thoughts? Because I can talk about it for a second.
I think that Grodov Stranger is still one of the most powerful cards in the format.
I think that Sunny's deck looked kind of bad. Sorry,
my deck was bad, yeah, but I don't think adding more Grodov Stranger was going to help.
No. I don't think just taking out any 2 cards and adding in 2 more Grodov Stranger was going to make your deck better. That was not going to be the case. But I think there are good Grodov Stranger decks out there. I also think that I think again you have to play the card correctly in the correct build. Sorry, what was I thinking? So first off, I'd like to say that I think Makar Stranger is kind of not as good as it used to be. I think the nerf impacted Makar Stranger a lot more than Grodov Stranger. The losing the 1 extra attack means it's actually just it actually feels a lot smaller, and it's kind of a liability in Stranger mirrors because you play it out and then they play multiple Strangers, and then you just kind of unless you're also playing every Stranger possible. But I don't think you can play like 4 Makar Stranger, 4 Grodov Stranger.
No, I would definitely not do that. I was playing 2 Makar Stranger, and you might just want 1. It's a liability in the Stranger Mirror, but I think that Stranger Mirror is so far away from what the metagame is going to look like.
Well, that could be true with Tales of Horus Traver.
I think that was true anyway.
No, I think around like a fourth of games involve Strangers to some capacity.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that the deck was good.
No, but I think the Grodov Stranger decks have been. There are those that are good. You have to play it correctly. Basically, you can't just throw it in anywhere. I do think Tavrod might make Grodov Stranger a little bit worse because Tavrod comes down earlier and does a lot of what Grodov Stranger wants to do.
Yeah.
And is just blocks it really well. I'm also kind of, and I can crucify to this too. I'm not truly on board with Sunny's plan of Carver is bad, but I'm slowly coming around to the idea that what if you take a Fire Time Shadow deck, what's it called? What's the thing called?
Destruction.
Yeah, if you take a Destruction deck, what if you play a Destruction Sacrifice deck, but remove Carvers? I think that might actually be the way to go.
Wow, okay, so if you are suggesting that and not going all the way to saying that Carver is bad, look, I think that Carver is a card that can be very good, but I just don't think it has nearly enough support to actually be as good as people think it is.
So what I mean by that is, I mean that I think it's worth testing the ideas of a Destruction deck without Carver. I'm not fully on board the whole Carver is not good in the metagame train. I'm on the testing train. I think there's things to test without Carver because it kind of, especially if people are going to start teching against the Rakano aggro decks, Carver probably gets worse when people are trying to tech against Rakano aggro because, it's one thing if your 1/1 cultist token gets condemned, right? If you play the Heed's Choice and you get a 1/1 cultist condemned. If you get Carver condemned, that sucks a lot more. I think the resurgence of Rakano aggro might also push Carver downwards in my estimation. But, I could be wrong. Carver is still, has a powerful effect. It's just possible that Sunny is right here.
We just broke down the top 16 decks from the weekend, right?
Yes.
And we had some Strangers decks. We had 2 Carver decks, and we had 1 Armory deck. It wasn't the Firetime Justice, it was the Rakano Armory.
Yes.
So that's a total of 6 decks that are some sort of, I guess, mid-range. I'm not sure what you call Carver, mid-range tokens or just tokens or something. The other 10 decks are all very aggressive.
Yes.
You have
that is
Rakano aggro, 2 Combray aggro, you have the Elysian Flyers, 2 Skycrag Dragons, and 4 Unseen decks. So I'd say, looking at this, that it's a very aggressive format.
So the problem for any, potential control deck that you might want to create is that a lot of these decks also fight on different axes. So it's hard to fight against, right? Unseen is very different than Elysian Skies, and Elysian Skies is very different than Skycarrier Dragons, even though they both are in the air. And Rakano Aggro is different than all three of those. And, the Aggro Carver variants with more shrines or whatever are also very different. And so, that's why it's hard to make a control deck work, is that it's hard to fight against everything. I think that I think there are control decks out there. I've been tinkering with some stuff, but I haven't found anything truly spectacular yet. Volatility is sadly not good. I hate to say this. If you really want to create something great for the ECQ, I would just stay away from volatility right now. It's not going to do what you want it to do in this format. There's no Sea of Teeth. I think it's actually a pretty big loss. I'm not even kidding. And really what I mean by that is that there's no spell that makes a unit, right? You have Thunder of Wings, but that's not really what you want to be doing with volatility.
Distillation's good, and Sweeper's good, but you need something else that's like really relevant.
There's Moment of Creation, which is not good. So probably the Moment of Creation is that one, it's really slow. It's like absurdly slow. And the second problem is that if 25% of the decks are playing 12 Grodov Stranger, then you just lose. Because your control deck obviously is a control deck. So, it's not like you can get the Moment of Creation down before the Grodov Stranger. So, if 25% of the metagame, whether or not the Grodov Strangers are good, Sonny, 25% of the game is probably going to play Grodov Stranger.
Well, my point was that why would you even play Moment of Creation when you can just play Grodov Stranger? It seems better at one less most of the time.
The other big problem with volatility is that in Throne, you can play Zoltan Arcanum and, your other big stuff in the market. But in Expedition, you can't put Arcanum in the market. You have to put Arcanum in the main deck. And suddenly you have 20 cards that cost 5 or more with the volatilities. That's kind of... Volatility is sort of like a card that costs 5 or more in some ways. So you kind of have 24 cards that cost 5 or more. And if you want to play Grodov Stranger, you're suddenly having like 28 cards that cost 5 or more. And it's just, the real problem is the market. If you had smugglers or regular merchants in Expedition, you probably could make volatility work to some extent, because you could put your other good expensive cards in the market, right? You could stick like a Grodov Stranger in the market or a Zoltan Arcanum in the market. But since you can't do that, it makes it a lot harder to make the deck functional, which is a shame, because obviously like the card, there are some meme decks that I'm still tinkering about with volatility because I love the card so much. But yeah, don't. Okay, I went on another tangent. You guys gotta stop me, okay?
I was actually kind of wondering about that. Yeah, let's wrap it up. All right. So
Sonny's got a final announcement.
Yeah, well, okay. So, I hope the metagame breakdown for the QCP challenge is helpful. I'm really looking forward to what we're going to talk about on the next show. I'm sure we'll have our, tuned metagame preview for the next ECQ, and we'll see if I'm still this high on Rakano Aggro and this low on Strangers and Carver and whatnot. We'll definitely try to get some people together to have some expert opinions. All right. So, yes, I do have an exciting announcement. So, as some of you may know, I am now unemployed because of because it was voluntarily because of the coronavirus outbreak. I'm not concerned about my own health so much, but I am in frequent contact with my parents who are, getting up there in age, and I'm just in really close contact with a lot of people. And there's a music teacher, there's a lot of like heavy breathing and saliva going around and like touching pianos that other people have to. It's just a bad idea.
You're with kids, and those are known to be germ factories.
Yeah, so
I say that's someone that's also worked with children. So
yeah, I have a lot of free time now as I'm unemployed and I'm not really streaming right now. So I thought it would be really cool to have some Friends of Eternal team meetings leading up to the next ECQ. Next week is going to be crunch week for the ECQ. So I was thinking, hey, let's get an hour. Let's set aside an hour every day where we just talk about where we are with the format and what we think is going on, what our last day of testing has been. So we need to decide on a time, and I'll have a poll in the Discord about that. But my plan is 6 p.m. every day next week, starting on Sunday, leading up to the ECQ. We'll get together and we'll discuss some things. That'll be a daily Friends of Eternal scrum. And you don't have to be on Friends of Eternal to participate. Just like everything that Friends of Eternal does, it's open to anyone who wants to be a part of it, whether you want to fly or flag or not. But just check out the Discord for that. and I think it'll be a lot of fun. Editing Sunyveil here with just one more piece of information. If you want to view the poll, it is in team announcements in the Friends of Eternal server. So yeah, if you are interested in these team meetings leading up to the ECQ, please vote on a time.
You can be a friend of Friends of Eternal.
Yeah, that's what we call everyone else in the Discord.
The friends?
Yeah, the friends of Friends of Eternal.
The FOE. Oh, FO,
the FFE. The FFE.
The Fifi.
I'm not even getting into this.
All right. Thank you, Stormblessed, and thank you, Camomilk, for all your insights that you add to the cast.
Sorry for all the tangents today.
Congratulations to Gilead, and shout out to Chrissy for excellent finishes this past weekend. And I'm looking forward to ECQ week. It's always a lot of fun and really exciting.
All right. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone out there. Tell your friends about FECast, the best place to get information about upcoming competitive events. That's kind of what this has turned into. And until next time, we will see you in the friend zone. Friends of Eternal is awesome, but you know what's even more awesome? Our amazing patrons over at patreon.com. That's right, Friends of Eternal now has a Patreon where you can help support the content and initiatives of Friends of Eternal. If you enjoy FECast and you enjoy the Piloting Club and you want to join the people that make all this possible and sustainable, be sure to head over to patreon.com/Friends of Eternal and consider donating. Every little bit does help. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time on FECast.